So game 3 of the Western Conference Finals is on tonight, and Dallas is already up 2-0 after stealing both of Minnesota's home games. Crazy to think about considering all the discourse coming into the series with almost everybody writing Dallas off. I didn't, but I also don't have any physical evidence or digital evidence of me doing that, so I'm not really going to brag about it. But anyways, what is it that Minnesota can do to come back into this series? I think for one, they have to see what's going on with Anthony Edwards. Now, I understand that there's been a lot of injury speculation, especially since he took that nasty bump that he took in, like, Game 6, midway through the third quarter, I think it was. But we don't have any kind of official word on it, so I'm not going to do too much speculating on that. But that is a possibility. But anyways, I think the very first thing we need to talk about with Anthony Edwards is his threes aren't hitting anymore. Consistently, anyways. Because if you look in the Suns series and like halfway through the Denver series, Anthony Edwards was very comfortable taking like 8 threes a game and making 44% of them almost on a game-by-game basis. But now, since Game 5 of the Denver series, which even in that game, I think he went like 1 for 5, he's gone down. He's really not been that good. I think since Game 5, he's been like 32% from 3. And even though the 3 ball isn't falling as consistently as it once had, he's still taking a lot of them. Like, you look in Game 7 against Denver, he shot 10, only made 2. Shot 12 in Game 1 against Dallas. Granted, he did make 5 of them, but then we go to Game 2, and he takes 7 and only makes 2 of them. So why is he falling off from 3? Why is he falling from this 44% three-point shooter on 8 attempts a game, making a lot of them off the dribble? Why did he fall from that to somebody who can't even really hit open shots no more? And honestly, I think there's a real possibility that you could just chalk that up to him being on a hot streak coming into the playoffs, and then him just kind of falling back into what's normal for him. Because if you look at his regular season three-point shooting numbers, they're not anything crazy. I think it's like 35% on 6 attempts, which is kind of close to what his percentages are right now since Game 6, I think. Because here's the thing, Dallas and Denver didn't really change up any of their defensive schemes to, like, you know, drive Anthony Edwards off the three-point line or something. Every game in this Dallas series so far, Derek Lively has been playing drop coverage when Anthony Edwards is coming around the screen. Anthony Edwards has had a lot, and I mean a lot, of wide open three-pointers that he just has flat out missed. And not even just in this series. This was the same exact thing was happening in Denver too. And while I do think that the easiest answer to this would just be stop settling for as many three-pointers, you know, go attack the rim more. Go get your post game going that you had in, you know, against the Suns and a little bit against Denver. Take your open mid-rangers that you have been passing up all series long. But, I mean, right now, this is just kind of who Anthony Edwards is. Even if you look in the 2023 playoffs and the 2022 playoffs, those two combined, he put up like 9 threes a game. So I think at this point, Ant is just going to be the guy who puts up a lot of threes. Especially when he's coming around the screen and he sees drop coverage is there. And he's like, well, it's open. I might as well take it. I think moving forward, you just kind of have to hope that he, you know, makes them. But also part of the problem is that these threes that he is taking, these high volume amount of threes that he's taking, is sometimes the only offense that he ever actually tries to generate for himself. Especially if you look in Game 1 of the Dallas series, he almost didn't take any kind of shot inside of the three-point line. Like if you look at Game 1, like I said, he took 12 threes, but he also only took 16 shots in total. Only 4 of his shots were inside the three-point line. And even the other night, in Game 2, yes, he dialed it down to only 7 threes, but he also only took 17 shots. When you're Anthony Edwards and you're as explosive as you are, you know, you're as good of a mid-range shooter as you are, when you have shown us in these specific playoffs that you can be a good post-up player, only taking 10 shots inside the three-point line is just unacceptable. It's just unacceptable. You know, when you come around the screen and you see that Derek Lively is in a deep drop, take a few steps forward and take your easy mid-range shot. If you're in isolation against Derrick Jones Jr., you don't have to call for a screen every time if you want to score on him. You can drive on him And then you even have situations in very late in game 2, 3 seconds left when Naz Reid took that shot. Before Anthony Edwards actually passed it to Naz Reid, Ant had a wide open driving lane. You know, Derrick Jones hadn't fully committed to helping on Ant yet, and Ant had an angle on his primary defender. He could have driven it to the basket, especially since you're only down 1 point. So yeah, if Minnesota has any hope of coming back into this series, Anthony Edwards has to be more aggressive inside of the 3-point line. And you know what? Speaking of that last Minnesota possession, I think another big takeaway from this series is just that Dallas isn't scared of anybody else going off on this team. And I do think this also goes back to the reasons why Anthony Edwards is struggling, because Dallas is very honed in on Ant anytime he goes past the 3-point line. They don't care about what any other player on the Minnesota Timberwolves does other than Anthony Edwards. They don't care if Jaden McDaniels is going off for 19 points in the first half. They don't care if Naz Reid is hitting 8 threes in a game. They know that if Anthony Edwards is not going off, none of that other shit matters. And I think that final possession really embodies Dallas's whole defensive scheme against this team and why it's been working. Because Anthony Edwards catches the ball, and he didn't even make the attempt to try to drive down the lane or isolate and get his own bucket. He passed it off to Naz Reid almost immediately, and there was nobody on Naz Reid. The guy who was on Naz Reid was helping off of him to try and shut off a potential Ant drive to the basket. And when the ball got to Naz Reid and Naz Reid took it, he missed it. Dallas said, hey, those 7 to 8 threes that you took before this point don't matter to us, because you're not going to be the guy that beats us. The guy that can beat us is Anthony Edwards. So we're just going to keep worrying about him. And if you make your shots, you just make them. But we don't think you're going to be able to consistently like that. And I think this is really just exposing a floor spacing issue that the Minnesota Timberwolves do have. Because in today's NBA, just being able to hit threes is not enough to be considered a floor spacer. Because almost everybody can hit threes now. Almost every guard and wing on most teams in the NBAs can hit a couple of threes every game. But not everyone is going to hit enough threes for you to say, yeah, you can beat me. You can beat my team if you do that. Because really and truly, that's part of the reason why the Timberwolves were able to beat the Denver Nuggets. Because they finally realized, hey, Aaron Gordon might be able to shoot a couple threes, but he's not going to beat us from there. KCP is capable of hitting his threes, but he's not going to beat us by doing that. Michael Porter Jr. can. Jamal Murray possibly could. Nikola Jokic, honestly, he's not going to beat us from 3. So if we can just stop the 3-point shooting of Jamal Murray and MPJ, then they have no spacing. The only player on this Minnesota team who you can say, hey, if he's hitting 5 or 6 threes a game, we're going to lose, is Karl Anthony Towns. And that's because if Karl Anthony Towns is hitting threes, now he feels a rhythm to actually be able to take advantage of his size difference inside of the 3-point line. Like if Cat is making his threes, now he's feeling comfortable enough to post up somebody like Derrick Jones Jr. and just hit fadeaways over them. Now he's comfortable enough to, run pick and pops and run big man pick and rolls with Rudy Gobert. And if that dimension of the Timberwolves offense opens up, then you're probably not going to stop them from scoring. And that's why you have seen these players just stick to Karl Anthony Towns like glue, because they don't want him to get going. And Dallas's mentality of this can't beat us doesn't just extend to Naz Reid threes and Jaden McDaniel threes. Mike Conley, for a good bit of this game, was keeping Minnesota in the game with his pick and roll actions with Rudy Gobert and hitting his floaters or getting the ball to Rudy. But Dallas never adjusted their drop coverage to stop that. They said, you know what, you can get this as much as you want, but when it comes down to crunch time, we don't believe that you can beat us by doing that. And they were right, because Mike Conley ran those same actions like in the last 2 minutes of the game, last minute of the game, and he missed a couple of floaters. If Karl Anthony Towns doesn't have a hot hand, and he decides, hey, I'm going to post up this guy, or I'm going to drive on this guy, Dallas isn't scared of that. They're not sending 2 to the ball to Karl Anthony Towns anymore, because they realized what I realized and what a lot of other people realized. Cat's not good at basketball. You know, if Cat's posting up and he hasn't made a lot of threes, or if Cat's driving to the basket and, you know, he hasn't had a hot hand from three or anywhere else, more often than not, he's going to miss those shots. So there's no reason to overreact to him and then get caught in rotation and have the ball eventually end up in Anthony Edwards' hands, and now he's driving in for a dunk. So yeah, unless Anthony Edwards goes back to averaging 30, 35 on really good efficiency like he was the first half of this playoffs, Dallas is probably going to close out this series in 5. And hell, even as far as what they could potentially do against Dallas defensively, I don't think they have an answer for Luka Doncic. I just don't. Like, I really don't. Because they ran almost every single defensive coverage that you could imagine in that third quarter when they were up 18. And it didn't matter. And Luka single-handedly brought his team back into the game. Because once Dallas saw that Rudy Gobert and Karl-Anthony Towns and Naz Reid were playing up on the screens and almost damn near blitzing them, Dallas said, okay, we're going to run a double screen action. We're going to get 3 Minnesota players up here close to Luka Doncic, getting their attention on him. And the second screener, either Gafford or Lively, they're just going to roll to the rim. The first screener, I think it was PJ Washington or Derrick Jones Jr., they're just going to go back out to the wing. And now you have 3 players whose eyes are on Luka, with someone running towards the rim. And more times than not, the guy that's on an island out there as Derek Lively, as Daniel Gafford are rolling towards the rim, is Karl-Anthony Towns. So not only is Karl just not a good defender, he's also not a smart one. So when Luka steps back and he does his head fake and tries to, you know, look off Karl towards the corner, Cat is going to fall for that every time. And he did fall for that every time. When Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford got like 3 straight dunks off of this action. And so now the Timberwolves are like, okay, this isn't working. We have to go back to drop coverage. And now because Rudy is in a deep drop and Jaden McDaniels has been horrible at navigating screens this whole series, now when Luka goes around the screen, McDaniels is on his back. He's behind him. So now Luka can hit his floaters, he can hit his layups potentially, he can step back for an easy mid-range, he can do whatever he wants against drop coverage because he's just that good. And because Luka is as phenomenal of a passer that he is, and paired up with the fact that he's like 6'8", if Rudy even steps up a little bit during that drop action, Luka's getting a lob to Derek Lively. He's getting a lob to Daniel Gafford. And now that drop coverage wasn't working, now the Mavs are really back in the game. And they're like, man, we have to do something to stop Luka. And so now they play a little bit of a drop. Luka comes around the screen. And the second he takes 2 steps past the 3-point line, now everybody's coming up on him. Luka drives, the whole defense collapses in on him. But again, because he is legitimately one of the best passers to ever play this sport, now he can just turn around, wrap his arms around one of the defenders, and just throw the ball out to PJ Washington. And now PJ Washington has an open 3. He can kick it out to the corner. He can kick it out to the wing. He can throw it back to the top of the key. He can throw it anywhere he wants to. And someone is wide open. And then when Luka's off the floor, or when Luka is off to the corner or the wing somewhere resting, Kyrie Irving can do a lot of this same stuff, albeit to a lesser degree. You know, you try to blitz a screen that's being set for Kyrie Irving, he's going to split the double team. And now he's full head of steam to the basket and no one's there to stop him. You play drop on Kyrie Irving, that's one of the best mid-range shooting guards in NBA history. He's going to make that shot. You try to play up on him once he comes across that screen and crosses the 3-point line. Kyrie Irving's still a good passer, and now you have all these Kyrie Irving lobs to Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford. And then when Minnesota finally decides, you know what? Switch everything. Just switch everything. We can't keep getting caught in these actions. Switch everything. Or even when Jaden McDaniels says, hey, I'm going to finally learn how to navigate a screen. Luka and Kyrie are also two of the best ISO players to ever play this game. If you say, hey, whatever, we're just going to sit home and let our guys play defense, they're going to get cooked. Because even putting that game winner over Rudy aside, because I will get to that in just a few minutes, every time Kyrie Irving wanted Mike Conley and they let him get Mike Conley, Kyrie was cooking. Whether it was the three or just hitting a fadeaway mid-ranger over Mike Conley. Mike Conley cannot guard Kyrie Irving. Honestly, nobody on this team can guard Kyrie. Or the few times that Jaden McDaniels, who is their ideal Luka defender, the couple of times that McDaniels was actually able to navigate the screen correctly and get back on Luka so he can't abuse the drop coverage or any of that other stuff, Luka said, okay, I'll just drive on you. And he did. And it worked every time. He said, oh, I'll just hit my step back on you. I'll just get closer on you, post you up, and shoot over you. And so I say that specifically about Luka to say that it doesn't matter who's guarding Luka Doncic on this team. That step back three for the win is going over any of these people. Any of them. And I understand it's very fun to make fun of Rudy Gobert. Yeah, haha, you get cooked, haha, fraud, DPOY, whatever. But to go around and say that Rudy shouldn't have been in the game at all is just crazy to me. Because he is the only guy on that team that can actually defend the rim. Even if he's all the way out there isolated on Luka. He is the only person on this team that can definitively contest a Luka Doncic drive. And whether we like it or not, Rudy Gobert is also one of the best defenders in space on this team. I don't care what your little haha fraud deal POI blah 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 says. He's still better than Kyle Anderson. He's still better than Karl Anthony Towns. He's still better specifically against Luka than Mike Conley. He's probably better against Luka than Anthony Edwards. Because I've seen Luka hit these same shots over Ant in this specific series. I think this whole thing is just more of a testament to how just fucking amazing Luka Doncic is. This man is legitimately one of the best basketball players to have ever graced this sport. And listen, I saw I don't know if it was Chandler Parsons. Chandler Parsons said something like Luka Doncic right now is already better than Larry Bird ever was. Hey man, look, if we're throwing rings and nostalgia and accolades and all that stuff aside, what is it in Larry Bird's skill set that actually makes him better than Luka? Like this boy, ooh, that's a topic for another time. But anyways, I really don't think Dallas has to adjust anything going into this game 3. Because until Anthony Edwards decides to go off for 40, there's just nothing that the Timberwolves can do. Honestly, there's just nothing. This series is probably going to be over in 5. But yeah, that's it. Appreciate y'all for listening. Appreciate y'all for watching. I will be posting an almost immediate Game 3 reaction. So, whenever the game's over, that'll be up a little bit after. But anyways, appreciate y'all for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, all that stuff. Have a good day. Peace.